Let's see what we got. College football. Sweet college football. May 19th yesterday. How far are we away from college football, actual games, the whole thing? So far away. Couldn't be much further away. And then Jimbo Fisher. During this show yesterday, just drops an absolute bomb of a press conference. That was nuts yesterday. And we're certainly going to get into it today. Love to hear you guys' opinions on that thing because, wow. And if you think I'm reveling in this and it's kind of sad for college football, all right. But let's all agree, okay? These guys are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. And to see them get personal and ugly and the whole thing yesterday, to me, it is what makes college football so special. The massive personalities, right? The massive power brokers of the sport. And then, I mean, these guys have known each other from the same state in West Virginia. Jimbo worked for Nick Saban at LSU and then being competitors. And I mentioned, I came on the show yesterday. I think I started the show with an apology to Jimbo Fisher because I gave my big take last year about this time that Jimbo came out and said, no, Texas A&M's not going anywhere. We're going to beat Alabama while Nick Saban is there. And I said, whoa, what are you doing, man? Well, why? Why would you poke the bear? It doesn't make any sense. But it did. It totally made sense for Jimbo Fisher. It showed his program, hey, I'm not scared of him. We are not going to be scared of them. And then they went out and beat Alabama last year. Now, they also lost 4 other games. And did you guys see Lane Kiffin's always got to get into it somehow. You guys see the tweet from Kiffin? He retweeted someone who showed the recruiting class success of Texas A&M the last several years, how many 5-star recruits they hadn't got until last year when they got 7 and then ended up being the number 1 recruiting class. And that sparked those comments from Nick Saban the other day. And basically the sentiment is, yeah, nothing changed except for the NIL, and then you started being able to recruit. Oh, man. It's so fun to see that little back and forth. And I say fun, like it's amateurish. Sure, they're both little kids, like 12-year-olds is how somebody posed it on an article I just read on The Athletic, talking to former assistant coaches on Nick Saban's staff and guys who used to play for LSU when they were both there, and getting the kind of the behind the scenes deal and saying, no, there's no love lost between these two. They have been respectful in public, but Jimbo had a problem with how Nick Saban ran things when he was working for Nick Saban and didn't appreciate feeling underappreciated, I think, as an offensive coordinator. And all you had to do is have a pair of eyes while Lane Kiffin was Nick Saban's offensive coordinator and watch their interaction on the sideline. As you can tell, Lane Kiffin didn't appreciate it very much either, and ended up getting left by the bus and basically fired in the college football playoff. So we all know that how the reputation of Nick Saban as a boss precedes himself, what it is in the college football world. But never, ever did I think we would see a sitting college football coach at any school, much less in the same division in the SEC as Nick Saban and Alabama, come out and do what Jimbo Fisher did yesterday. It was personal. It was bold. It was, in a lot of ways, shocking. Maybe confirming to a lot of us who have watched Nick Saban through the years, and that's always my main complaint. Obviously, he's the best ever. The record shows that, but the way he has done it is so hard to watch and feel good about. if you, I don't know, value human interaction, you see a guy over there pouting and then just ripping guys, knowing how he runs the whole coaching staff. And that article in The Athletic I just referenced gave some more details about that. Apparently there's an infamous recruiting call every Saturday morning that Saban at least had while Jimbo Fisher was on the staff at LSU. I would assume he probably still has it. But that's one example of how Saban has been kind of notorious as just a bad boss, demanding boss, as opposed to a guy like Steve Spurrier, who had kind of the opposite reputation, good to work for, actually did allow his coaches to get some family time in the whole thing. So just fascinating on so many levels. And glad you guys are a part of it this morning. Craig, Jason, all pumped up for Friday. You guys weighing in on the YouTube live stream. We see you. Anthony, good morning, UFAs. He says, SEC Shorts, check it out. Yeah, I retweeted that one. It's a great one. The SEC Shorts, I think, is fantastic, brilliant, and how quickly they do these things. They pop one out this morning where it's Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher sitting on the couch in A&M and Alabama jerseys and basically being high school boys, and the role of Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, being played by a mom, and the mom just getting after the two 12-year-olds who aren't getting along. It's what it is. It's exactly what, I mean, actually, this time where I always appreciate the SEC Shorts for maybe making things a little bit more dramatic or playing it up, right? I think this time real life was actually more personal, it was more real. It was more dramatic than the actual dramatic interpretation of it. Because that thing happened yesterday. I mean, it happened. It was a 9.5-minute press conference that Jimbo Fisher just said, I don't care. This has got to get out there. I don't care about the public perception of my relationship with Nick Saban. And I'm going to throw it all out there. And he did. And it was something. Mark's weighing in, says, found this yesterday. Looking forward to hanging out, moving forward. Absolutely, Mark. Great to have you. Glad you found it. If you're new to the show, welcome in. I still don't know what this thing is. I got no clue. Today, going to try to play you some of those clips to make sure we're all on the same page. Everybody's at least, even if you heard it, it's worth hearing, seeing again for sure. I think we got the technology to do that. We're going to figure it out today. Love for as many of you to be a part of this show, to weigh in the live stream as possible. Makes it a lot more fun for me instead of just sitting here chirping for 2 hours, that's for sure. Also, love to bring you some guests as well, and have been doing that through the first, I guess this will make it 3 weeks today when this show gets finished. And really appreciate their time and the whole thing. Their support for this show, being willing to do something a little bit different outside the box, the whole thing. Rodney weighing in this morning. Craig with scathing. That's a great word for it. Scathing is probably the best word. If you had to pick one word for that press conference yesterday, scathing. York in this morning as well with a Hey UFA gang. Rob weighing in on the Facebook live stream. Jimbo Fisher called Saban a friend and a great coach last season. He put in quotes, the friend and the great coach. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Well, yeah, in this Athletic article this morning as well, the word phony was brought up with the reputation of Jimbo Fisher by some in the coaching world, and said he's a polarizing figure. Some call him a phony. Some call him the guy, a guy with the highest character. All of this is going in. All this makes it so dramatic. Chad weighing in says, love to see you back at it, Tim. Thanks, Chad. So there's so many different ways to think about this, right? You do the simple binary, all right, what do you got? Saban or Jimbo, right? And I don't think most college football fans have a whole lot of love for either of them. Chad says, still don't know what Jimbo was going on about. Saban never called him a cheater or a liar. Well, Chad, read between the lines, man. When he came out and said what he said, that Texas A&M bought every player in the class, he called him a cheater and a liar, right? It's technically against the name, image, and likeness rules to guarantee any kind of money and any kind of pay for play, that you're going to get paid this if you come play for us, right? So That's what Jimbo took personally. And everybody has said this about the Texas A&M recruiting class, right? Everybody. I mean, if you have any kind of critical thinking skills at all, it doesn't take long to figure out Texas A&M's got a lot of money. Money can now get paid to guys in college without it technically being against the rules. They figured out a great way to do it and got a lot of guys, a lot of the top prospects in college football to come play for them. Number one recruiting class, Alabama with number two. And again, we're going to get to it in a second. I'm going to let you hear those comments again in a second so we can all keep going. The greatest debate with this, Nathan says, was this calculated by Saban or did he overextend his hand? And that to me is the most fun of all this, right? I don't think this was some kind of grand plan. I think this was actually a rare moment of a big time, a college sports legend who was speaking to an Alabama crowd the other night, basically there to raise money and get that NIL pool up to get more money for his organization. So it will be more attractive to get more of these players in, but to only do it how he wants to do it, right? And that's why he came off so sanctimonious and the whole thing. But Nathan, I don't think it was calculated at all. And then the response by Jimbo was obviously premeditated to a certain degree, but I think that was just the emotional reaction of, hey, I've had enough. I'm done. I mean, he said, I'm done with him. We're done. That Saban called and he didn't answer, and we're done with that relationship. Oh. Rob says Saban spoke the truth. No one goes to A&M unless you pay them. They're the little brother school in the state. Well, A&M fans would certainly disagree with that, but University of Texas does have the largest athletic department budget in the country. I hear what you're saying. Now, but that's the part about all this, and that's why I'm glad we got 2 hours today to discuss. This is where, man, if you are on the local news and you can only do a 3-minute segment, even if you dedicated it all to Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, no way you can come anywhere close to telling this story and giving it justice, because there are so many layers to this. Saban spoke. It was like an hour-long clip, I think, that got popped up by AL.com from this gathering for Alabama fans that included Nate Oates, the basketball coach, and Nick Saban, where he made these comments about Texas A&M, about Deion Sanders and Jackson State. And he did speak some truth, Rob. Absolutely. Some truth, but not the whole truth. And Andy Staples from The Athletic does a great job of breaking it down, and I'll try to relay some specifics there and maybe the overall gist about where Saban got it right and where he absolutely did not get it right. Because I think that's the really important part moving forward from this, is to understand there is no 100% Nick Saban is right. There is no 100% Jimbo Fisher is right moving forward. I think most of us who come at it from the college football perspective of, yeah, I don't know if I really like either one of those guys. You can probably be affirmed moving forward that, yeah, there's still reasons to not like either one of these guys moving forward, even as they don't like each other. So maybe the question I'm trying to wrap my head around in this thing is, which side would I choose if I had to, the Jimbo side or the Nick Saban side? I think I would go the Jimbo side at this point, but there's plenty of messiness and sleaziness and the whole thing on each side. Chad says, fair. I think Deion summarized it best. Saban wasn't talking to Jimbo or Deion. He was talking directly to his boosters. You got to put their money where their mouth is. But that's the thing about the 21st century, though. Today is those gatherings that Steve Spurrier said he'd always say corny jokes to Gator fans, and then they would end up getting repeated in the no, can't spell citrus without UT and the whole thing. Well, now we all can see these comments minutes after they're said, and the context in which they're said doesn't really matter, or is a very small footnote as opposed to what you said. Oh, Mark said he watched the replay of yesterday's show. All right, high school basketball in South Carolina. Interesting. Yeah, I had David Smith and John Combs on. Thank you, Mark. Meredith watching her picks at the PGA Championship, and we'll certainly get into that with we'll pop up the headlines of the show real quick. So we got Jimbo versus Saban. We're going to play you some of those comments here in just a second. Gamecock baseball dropping the opener at Florida last night, 14-5 the final score, and 26-26, I believe, the final or the record right now going into tonight's game number 2 in that series. Get more information up for you on the live video portion of this show on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, how you can catch us 10 to noon every single day, Monday through Friday. And then Rory rolling, leading after the first round of the PGA Championship. Tiger struggling, looked good early, actually, 2 under through the first few holes. And then something happened there on his 9th hole, number 18 on Rolling Hills. He teed off on 10 to start, but looked like, I don't know what you call it, tweaked his injured leg already. And he said it hurt. He was in pain. And as long as he doesn't play golf, he's fine. But loading and shifting the weight and the whole thing just aggravates it, and clearly not the same after that. Ends up 4 over through round number 1. Interesting note that I saw, I guess he's 9 shots back of the lead. This is the 15th anniversary from when he won the PGA Championship back in the same course at Rolling Hills in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Back in the day, 15 years ago, the 15th anniversary. But he was 6 shots off the lead after the first round there, and then fired a 63 in round number 2, which at the time was a course record, I think, tied maybe the major record for a low round. So something to keep an eye on for sure today is if Tiger can bounce back. I just think physically it's near impossible for him at this point to get anywhere close to what we saw second round 15 years ago when he's much healthier. But something to certainly keep an eye on. And overall, I thought we got some pretty good names in contention, like Meredith gave us the heads up on. And we'll continue to keep track of those. If you guys didn't see Meredith's segment previewing the PGA Championship on Tuesday, her 3 names, as I go back in my notes here: Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Scotty Scheffler at the top there, and 3 names kind of outside the box: Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland, and Cameron Smith. So we'll give you updates on those as we continue to move on this morning. We're going to try to move on to the technically more complicated part of the program. We'll see if we can get this thing going. Got the option here to share the screen to play the video. So wanted to start with Nick Saban's comments from Wednesday night now. And then a portion of yesterday's. This is not going to be a full thing, but I think certainly enough for you to either rehear, maybe hear a little bit more than you've heard before, certainly get the context and the feel. I think that's the important part. When you hear these guys talk, I think you feel, at least I do, I feel the emotion that's attached to this thing. And what I really feel, I think, is that 12-year-old, I'm not winning right now feeling, right? Or I want to make sure I'm getting my way. The other guy is trying to get his way. It's what I see with my 9-year-old and 7-year-old all the time. It's the exact same feel when I hear these clips from Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher. So let's try to do it here. We'll start again with Nick Saban Wednesday night. He had a lot to say about name, image, and likeness. I'm going to give you just this portion of it. Going to try to give you this portion of it. We'll see if we can make this happen now. So we got Nick Saban sitting beside Nate Oates and a moderator at this event. Let's see if we can hear his comments loud and clear.
This is all bad for college sports. I mean, we probably have, 450 people on scholarship at Alabama, whether they're women's tennis players, women's softball players, golfers, baseball players, non-revenue sports that have for years and years and years been able to create a better life for themselves because they've been able to get scholarships and participate in college athletics. That's what college athletics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be something where people come and make money. And you make a decision about where you go to school based on how much money you're going to make. You should make a decision based on where you have the best chance to develop as a person, as a student, and as a player, which is what we've always tried to major in. And we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully there's enough people out there that want to do it. But I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it. So it's.
We'll stop right there. How about that, man? How about that? So the part that I think we just heard, the part that he got wrong, the part that's completely disingenuous, I think, is what we've always tried to do at Alabama is get people in to make them as better people in the whole thing, right? We hear all college coaches say this. And he was just talking about how it's always been equal. He's trying to make it equal at Alabama. He didn't quite hear all of those comments. But this is the thing that I read from The Athletic this morning that I think is the major point here. And maybe what we all feel as he's talking about this thing, but it's not crystal clear. It was crystallized to me with this article. Investment into the football program. I think it was Andy Staples from The Athletic went back and looked this stuff up from 2 years ago, right? It's the last full data from 2019-2020 school year. The investment into football at schools. You guys want to guess what Alabama did? Anybody want to guess on the comment line? Just throw out a number. How much they invested into their college football program at Alabama in the school year of 2019 and 2020. Take a wild guess. Let's see if you guys can get anywhere close because it's an interesting number for sure. And got some numbers of comparison for some other schools as well. Anybody want to take a shot? Feel free right now. Any kind of number in the millions of dollars. I'll help you out with that. I'll give you the number. $58.5 million. $58.5 million is what Alabama invested into its football program a couple of years ago. Elsewhere in the SEC, $58.5 million was Alabama's numbers. Mississippi State was at 30.5. So minus $28.5 million. Alabama had been investing more than $28 million than one of its opponents, who actually happened to beat Texas A&M last year, ironically. So you have nearly $59 million to $31 million. That's just within the SEC. And then if we're talking about keeping things equal along college football, I mean, we all understand it's the Power Five and then kind of everybody else. But in the article, because Nick Saban was a Kent State guy, because Kent State could technically play for a college football playoff championship, they looked their number up. You guys want to guess what that was? How many dollars were invested into the football program at Kent State in 2019-2020? 7. Which is still in real world terms, $7 million is mind blowing to me. But compared to 58.5, points out the massive hypocrisy that Nick Saban was sitting on his soapbox about. That they have tons of resources, and we all know this. Certainly South Carolina does it, Clemson does it, right? You try to build up your facilities to convince recruits to say, hey, man, you got a better situation here. The nutrition program, everything, the locker room, the amenities, the dorms, all of that is dollars, right? All of that is to create an advantage for your school over who you're recruiting against. And so to sell it as it's all about fairness in college sports and the whole thing is pretty ridiculous. But the part that had Jimbo fired up and all that was the last part, obviously. Bought every single player, and that's why they finished number 1, and Nick Saban finished number 2. So let's see if we can get a little bit of Jimbo's press conference, which, again, Jeff, I've sat in a lot of these press conferences before. Most of the time I'm sitting there disbelieving a lot what I hear or knowing that it is a percentage of the truth or reality, right? And see some of you guys weighing in here now with those picks that didn't quite come in for me. York guessed 110, which is not a bad guess for Alabama. Craig with 35. If you're guessing 35 for Mississippi State, that was a really good guess. But again, Alabama investing $58.5 million a couple of years ago in its football program. A school like Mississippi State was about 30, a school like Kent State at 7. Massive indifferences there. And now Jimbo Fisher trying to be a player as well, obviously. Here's part of his press conference. We'll start from the beginning, and wow.
Coach, like to respond to some comments made last night in Alabama?
Yes, I would. First of all, I'll say it's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. And they broke state laws. They're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen. And it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top, and the parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit here and defend 17-year-old kids and families and Texas A&M because we do things right. We're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here. We're doing a heck of a job. These coaches have done a great job. Our players have done a great job. The whole organization of recruiting people. It's despicable that we got to sit here at this level of ball and say these things to defend the people of this organization, the kids, 17-year-old kids and their families. It's amazing. Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past or anybody that's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. And it's despicable. It really is. And it's a shame we have to sit up here and have this conversation about things we do. And it's personal to us? Yes, it is. It's personal to A&M. It's personal to our players. It's personal to our coaches and everybody involved. And I know the guy. Know him really well. It's amazing that we're allowed to do those things. It's really despicable. And I hate it for our players who are coming here, who did things the right way, have done things the right way, and will continue to do things the right way. I apologize to you that people insult you publicly the way they're doing it. And our fans, I apologize to you guys for people saying those things about Texas A&M. But promise you this, there are no violations. There are nothing wrong. It's the second time we've had to do this with grown men who don't get their way and want to pout, throw a fit, and act up. Just go ask all the people who work for him. You'll know exactly what he's about. I always said this. My dad always told me this. When people show you who they are, believe them. He's showing you who he is.
Questions? To the left, Olin.
What an opening statement, huh?
A couple of things, Jimbo. First of all, have you had any contact with Nick since?
No. He's called.
You just didn't take the call?
Not going to. We're done.
And
he shows you who he is.
And then I just wanted to.
He's the greatest ever, huh?
And then I just wanted
when you got all the advantages, it's easy.
And I just wanted to just put it point blank. So no players in you're saying that no players in
there's no laws of anything we ever
or...
promised, done anything that goes against the laws of the state of Texas. And it's insulting to say a 17-year-old and his family broke laws. No.
Down front, Brent.
Love how he's stepping on the questions.
You know, y'all have both spoken so highly of each other in the past in terms of what y'all done in your previous relationship. So how disappointing was it to hear that from him, you know, in terms of, you know, a mentor type?
It's discipline. No, it wasn't. No, listen, you coach with people like Bobby Bowden and learn how to do things. You coach with other people and learn how not to do things. There's a reason people don't go, I ain't went back and worked for him. With opportunities.
We'll stop it right there. Oh, with opportunities, he says. Just scorched earth. Went after him in so many ways. I wanted to play all of that for you just in case, even if you have heard that. Certainly worth it. I mean, wow. The last part to me is the biggest dig, basically saying, no, Bobby Bowden did it right. You're not doing it right. And I know because I worked for both of you. But despicable, a hilarious word, I think, to use. Jason says he can't decide which name's worse, Jimbo or Dabo. Double R. Thanks, man. Great to have you back in the sports realm. Enjoying the show. Great being on here with you, especially on a day that saw all of this stuff go down. Unreal. Unreal there. Because that's what, as being a media nerd, sitting in those press conferences so many times, right? That's the frustrating part from my perspective of not getting, of seeing a physical reaction, certainly seeing guys react to certain things on the field. And then after the 5-minute cooling off after the game or whatever it is, a lot of these coaches will go the high road, you might want to call it, or go the PR friendly road, the politically correct road, and not give you anywhere close to their honest feelings, or certainly anywhere close to what they were feeling at the time. I felt we got a lot of raw emotion there from Jimbo, especially. Now, how much truth we got it, I have no idea. I find it hard to believe. I mean, no one believes what he said, right? Basically, that no one got paid. None of those 17-year-olds. And to talk about them like that, like they're children, come on, man. That's another hypocritical part of the college coaching world, especially, that they're children. They're just kids. When they come in, and then, man, you ever been to a practice? They don't talk to them like children or kids. They talk to them a lot of times like I always feel like it's boot camp, right? That you're a military style boot camp, and you got plenty of drill sergeants out there. And even if it's not the head coach himself, he certainly has hired guys he knows that will be that guy for him. So the 17-year-old and their families, come on now. Now, I'm sure that Texas A&M is smart enough to have made sure they technically did not break any rules or laws. I would think anyway. I would hope, for Jimbo's sake. But that doesn't mean they did it the right way. I mean, and what is the right way now? Do we know? I don't know. I mean, to me, the right thing to do is to pay people for the work they do, for the service they provide, for the product they put out that's consumed for billions of dollars. That's the right thing here. And college football hadn't been about that ever. Finally, the Supreme Court basically forced them to be about that a little bit more across college athletics as well, but only because they were forced. And then they still couldn't figure out how to get any kind of system set up in place so it could run smoothly or anywhere close to smoothly right now. And now we get this. I don't feel bad for anybody involved in this. I certainly don't feel bad for Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M fans that their feelings got hurt. And what the social media has been amazing on this the last couple of days, right? Saw a message board post that from a Texas A&M fan that they should look into slander charges against Nick Saban and the whole thing. Unreal. Getting double feedback on the video, just an FYI. Thanks for the heads up there, Mark. I'm hoping you're not saying double feedback right now from how I'm talking, but I think we're good moving forward here. It's still working out the video of the technical kinks, though. So thanks for the heads up on that. So I'm wondering how you guys are taking this in, because again, Nick Saban said some things that are true. Jimbo Fisher, I think, said some things that are true. I mean, and the narcissist wants to think he's God. You learn things when you work for people, how to do them the right way and how not to do them. That's what sticks out in my mind. Oh, to me, you can't, as if you've ever been a boss somewhere, I would think that's probably the worst thing you could hear, right? That someone that worked for you saw how you did it, and they term that in their head now of how not to do it. And Jimbo just threw that out there. I love that Saban called him up to try to apologize. And then I think he was on ESPNU radio, Sirius XM, something to that effect last night. Saban saying that he did apologize. But I think it was one of those kind of non-apology apologies. He understands that might have crossed the line there or shouldn't have singled, I think is what he said, shouldn't have singled Texas A&M and Deion Sanders and Jackson State out. But this is just how we talk, right, as people who love college football. And to see head coaches do that for a little bit here recently was fantastic. And to see how personal Jimbo took that, fantastic. I October 8th, I think you guys probably know, said a lot yesterday. Alabama, Texas A&M. Everything that'll go into that thing, imagine. I mean, college football, October 8th, we're talking, 6 weeks into the season, 5 weeks into the season? Whew. After Texas A&M beat them last year. With this on top of it, man, what a way to get the offseason going. Yeah, RL says that Nick Saban also accused Deion Sanders, Jackson State, paying $1 million for Travis Hunter Jr. Deion says he will address that accusation fully today. Saw that Travis Hunter himself went on social media yesterday and he said, I got $1 million. Why does my mom still live in a 3-bedroom house or something like that? You better be careful when you're defending these things. If you're going semantics, because I feel like that's what Jimbo Fisher was doing, right? There, the word out there is that the Texas A&M collective that they had, and Nick Saban did mention collectives in this hour or so appearance on Wednesday night, just how they're separate from the university technically, but head coaches know exactly what's going on and how much money is involved in the whole thing. So you better be careful when you're going out there defending yourself, and clearly you have name, image, and likeness money exchanging hands. And that's kind of the wild, wild west part of this, right? Because money's going back and forth. But as long as no one would be dumb enough to basically write an agreement to the letter of the law that would be against the letter of the law that the NCAA has put out there, the very loose, can't have pay for play thing, then there's nothing the NCAA can do. And that's what will need to change moving forward. I do agree with Nick Saban on that. And I think all of us who are on the side that absolutely players should get paid. They deserve to be paid in college athletics, especially the money generating sports where football and basketball making so much money. Yes, they deserve to get paid. It's an employee relationship. You call it a student athlete deal. Well, the Supreme Court disagreed, right? But where we are right now with the collectives and the recruiting and how much it's affecting people, and no one wants the pay for play necessarily either. I mean, at least I don't think so. I mean, maybe you're more realistic like I am, and you understand it's always happened. It's been against the rules before. Some people have gotten caught, but most have not. And now it is a kind of a semantics deal, right? A nod and a wink, wink. Yeah, I'm not saying you're going to get paid this to come play here, but here's the opportunity we know is out there for you, right? So I guess the question becomes, how do you get any kind of handle on that? And I'm not sure you can. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. There's other comments Nick Saban was talking about how boosters are going to commit a bunch of money. They're going to come strutting into the stadium saying, yeah, I made sure that this guy was able to come to Alabama because I paid him this much, and then he's not going to play very much and he's going to transfer out. And then that booster is going to be mad at Saban, or just mad he lost his money, or the whole thing, and the market won't be able to sustain it kind of deal. Well, we'll see. We'll see how big money wants to get spent, right? Yeah, I can't imagine that. I think most of us just can't imagine living in that world where you can have guys kind of name their price and you get a call from whomever, right? This is the way I presume it goes. Jimbo calls someone, right? Or someone on Jimbo's staff calls someone who is not officially connected to the school. Or they have someone go between, right? They have a low-level staffer who is the middleman, says, all right, here's what it will take to get this guy signed. Then they go to the collective. The collective says, yep, we got it. Nope, we don't have it. And then it comes back to the coach, say, well, you better get it. We need him. Man, what a crazy place to be in college sports in that way. And Troy says, sure hope the A&M-Bama game time is different than the Clemson and Carolina games that day. Yeah, good point. October 8th. I'll look it up here in a little bit. I don't think I'm not that much of a planner. I think we're going to be all right. And so many eyes are going to be in on that game. And now I'm really interested to see where the relationship goes from here publicly. Is Jimbo going to soften? Because I think what he did yesterday, if you're a Texas A&M fan, put up the statue, right? Changed Kyle Field to Jimbo Field. This is yours now. You stood up to the bully, and you didn't do it with a writer behind closed doors to where he's going to write out your sentences and they'll look strong. No, you looked the camera right in the face. You talked over reporters' questions, and you went after Nick Saban for 9.5 minutes yesterday, and it was personal, and you didn't care. And if you're a Texas A&M fan, how could you not love that? I mean, he apologized to his fans. He stood up for his fans, and players and families and the whole thing. Only thing he did, I think, was increased his advantage. And I've seen it said out there where if Nick Saban is going to continue to have this mindset, it's going to end up hurting him in recruiting. Andy Staples' point on The Athletic this morning is that no one has ever been a more adaptable football coach, college football coach, especially than Nick Saban. He's going to make an adjustment one way or another and figure out. Or maybe not, or maybe end up taking his ball and going home, and that'll be done. I would be shocked if that's how it ends up, knowing how competitive he is. Still seems so connected to the game, nowhere close to being burnt out and doing it every single day and getting after it and the whole deal. Yeah, Troy, saw the SEC short, fantastic. But I'll say it again, I said a little bit earlier, it was almost less dramatic than the actual thing. This thing is so next level, never seen it before play out on a public stage like this between two head coaches, certainly of this level, that it's almost beyond parody. Media days in a few months will be must-watch TV. Half the coaches have coaches under Saban, have coached under Saban, I think is what RL's saying, and that's another part of this, that a little bit behind the scenes. Apparently, SEC media days the last few years have kind of been a divide between Saban guys and non-Saban guys. And Jimbo wasn't necessarily a Saban guy, even though he had coached for him, unlike, say, Will Muschamp or Kirby Smart, who have a lot more deference, I think. Because you're talking about Jimbo Fisher, he won his own national championship, right? I know Kirby just did and the whole thing, but he has not been a sitting national championship winner at SEC Media Days yet. But I was surprised with what I read today from those who were around back in, 2003, 2004, somewhere in there, where Jimbo Fisher coached at LSU with Nick Saban, to hear the amount of tension and resentment that was there at the time. I guess, and even as I say that, I shouldn't be surprised, right? I mean, two ultra-competitive guys. The point of that I pulled out of this was how much Jimbo was trying to prove himself and help his offense win any kind of drill or anything that was going against the defense. Even if Nick Saban was telling him to do something specific to help his defense get prepared, he would come up with a trick play or something crazy, something creative so his offense would look better. And Saban would be saying, I'm laughing because this is what my 9-year-old does in flag football practice. If I ever put him on the other side, trying to get the offense prepared and have some extra guys, right? Saying, all right, guys, we're going to do this. And then he's calling it out to the guys playing on defense. I'm like, oh, come on, man. The other defense is this. We're trying to get better for the whole team. It just, the fact that happened at LSU with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher is hilarious to me. The fact that this is what it comes down to, too. Like, ultimately, it's insecurity, right? I think that's why we heard from Nick Saban. He got beat in recruiting, even though he's number 2 in the country. Got beat on the field by Texas A&M and then got beat in recruiting. Allegedly, right? Who knows what that number 1 class will turn out to be. And these recruiting rankings kind of are what they are, right? But the perception is out there that Texas A&M has certainly closed the gap. And if Nick Saban was secure and felt good about his collective or the model moving forward or the whole thing, I don't think we hear what we heard. Why would you do that? Except for that narcissism that Jimbo was talking about, right? And then Jimbo certainly could have taken the high road and just put out a several sentence statement. I am aware of the comments that Nick Saban made. They are wrong. I apologize to any fans, families, or players who were called out by this or took offense to this. We know it's not true, but we will not speak disparagingly about other head coaches or programs in the SEC. I'm the head coach at Texas A&M, and we will continue to do things the right way here. There'll be no further comment on the situation, right? Which I assume we might end up getting here later today, to some extent, tomorrow, because man, how about that? How much would you pay right now? Pay-per-view, Zoom call, Greg Sankey, Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher. How about that pay-per-view? I mean, this UFC stuff, boxing forever has been pay-per-view. I mean, it would be much better if it was in person, no doubt, where they're actually like the SEC short setup, sitting both there on the couch and Sankey standing up in front of them, right, wagging his finger, letting them have it, which I think we would all love. College football would love that. Anybody outside of the Alabama and Texas A&M fan bases, whew, I mean, couldn't you make a ton of money, make that pay-per-view, release that as buy tickets for that? Because it made the SEC look ridiculous yesterday. Well, first of all, this is great for college football. We all understand that. Rivalries, winners, passion, getting personal. All this is great for college football because we'll be watching that October 8th game even more than we would have beforehand. I mean, I think all of us that love college football watched Texas A&M-Alabama last year. You're going to watch it again and then some this year. And knowing that, all right, what happens from here? I mean, Saban's already come out and said, I apologize for singling those 2 entities out, the Texas A&M and the Jackson State last night. But other than that, I don't. That's kind of his point. Jimbo Fisher says, no, we're done. I'm not taking this call. It's done. So my question is, how do you move forward now without coming off as the loser in this thing if you're Nick Saban or Jimbo Fisher, without just moving forward, not saying anything about it or continuing to take a dig here and there? I can see Jimbo doing that for sure. Going to be fascinating to see as the offseason really cranks up, where you're getting all these head coaches out and about, speaking to fan bases, seeing Shane Beamer moving around the state and the whole thing. See Troy weighing in here, agreeing with RL about media days. Going to be so fun. And I mean, we always look forward to them, but wow, this year going to be just a little different. All right, we'll get back into the Saban Jimbo situation and would love to get more of your takes out there about maybe who you side with, if you side with either one, or if you're kind of like me, man, not a fan of either one necessarily. have more respect for what Saban and he's done than what Jimbo Fisher has done in his career. But still, it's undeniable that Jimbo Fisher is a pretty good coach. Now, and I think I especially loved how he stood up and said out loud what we all just assumed to be true about Nick Saban kind of behind the scenes as a boss. But then he went, this is where I kind of got embarrassed for him, right? Like, it's one thing to stand up and defend yourself. It's another thing then to go on the offensive. And that's where this thing turned into hey, we're from West Virginia. Time to rip the shirts off. And this is where the argument turns into the out of control tussle, bringing the family members, get absolutely ridiculous. That's where it got when he was talking about narcissism and God and just go ask anybody. And Bobby Bowden, I learned how to do it the right way, work for other people and learn how to do it the wrong way or not to do it. Whew. I mean, that's where it's kind of like, yeah, wow. Because you can't come back from that, right? Jimbo Fisher can't come out today and say, I was reacting emotionally in the moment and made comments I now regret. I apologize to Coach Saban, have the utmost respect for him, blah, blah, blah. Look forward to a very competitive game on October 8th. No, A&M's not going to accept that. Jimbo, I mean, just look at him, right, from yesterday. He's not going to be that guy. He can't be that guy now. So what happens from here other than, I mean, the public reprimands are hilarious, right, from the SEC. Greg Sankey put out that statement, the bylaw, blah, blah, blah. Coaches are not supposed to say these things about other coaches or programs. Both have been publicly reprimanded, which means absolutely nothing. I mean, at least throw some fines out there, right? For a guy who makes $9.5 million a year, Nick Saban. Can you not throw $25,000 to a charity in his name for going out and calling out a specific other conference school? Jimbo Fisher for getting personal about another sitting head coach in the conference and just impromptu press conference clearly in reaction. And wow. So I would love to also see, not only would I love a pay-per-view of the upcoming talking to Greg Sankey, I assume we'll have with both of these guys, and probably won't even happen, right? It won't even happen with both of them in the room at the same time, unfortunately. It will be one little Zoom call with one coach, or one personal meeting with one coach and one personal meeting with the other coach. And because I think Sankey understands you're not going to work this out. The SEC has always been the best at moving forward unified from a conference perspective in big matters, right? We saw Texas A&M. They got their feathers ruffled and they called some meetings and the whole thing about Texas coming in the SEC, but eventually they shut up, right? They understood this is going to happen with or without you. You're not above the league, the conference. This ain't the Big 12. This is how we do it here. It's happening. Live with it. And they did. And maybe some of that is still left over from Jimbo Fisher's perspective. I don't know. I do know that was fantastic to watch yesterday. Another great layer to add. And I think ultimately is probably, I think it was cathartic for a lot of us as college football fans to see Jimbo Fisher kind of get that off his chest, maybe. And then it was at the same time ridiculous because it was like a couple of kids just saying, no, I want to be the best. No, I want to be the best. You were the best, but now we're going to be the best. And oh man, crazy. Absolutely nuts. A couple other things to get to today. I love that Rory had the first round lead at the PGA at 5 under. I was going to say I was sad to see Tiger struggle. I don't know if that's the right word. I would have preferred that Tiger kept playing well. He was 2 under after the first few holes. Would love that if Tiger and Rory would both be there at the top of the leaderboard. It makes me concerned for Tiger Woods moving forward, not knowing really. I don't think any of us know the full extent of the injury or all the details and the whole thing. I don't know if he's ever going to be anywhere close to the same. I think most of us don't think he's ever going to be the same, but can he ever be competitive at the highest level is the question. And we got a glimpse of both of that yesterday, right? Was at the beginning, but he played 72 holes in golf and he made it not even through 9 before tweaked that leg and wasn't the same on the back and finished 4 over. John Daly, better than Dustin Johnson yesterday. Fantastic for golf. If he could somehow keep it going through 72 holes, how glorious would that be? John Daly famously made his career as the 7th alternate back in the day in the PGA Championship. Then went on to somehow win the British Open a few years later. And other than that, hasn't had much success, but has been golf's most colorful character for decades now. So that's what I got out of the PGA Championship yesterday, hoping to get a lot more good stuff over the weekend. I think a lot of Gamecock fans saw the score, saw some of the game. Pretty good game early on. Andrew Reister, he was a 2-run double that tied the game up at 2 yesterday, relatively early on against Florida. And then this game, a lot like the last non-conference game, where Carolina was up 3-0 against Charlotte the other night. And then the Gamecocks gave up 8 unanswered pretty quickly to Charlotte, and that was it. And their 10th non-conference loss. Well, that's been the story kind of in the midweeks in the non-conference this year for Gamecock baseball that sits 26-26 now. And last night, I feel like, is kind of the story of the season as well. Good enough to stick around and compete for a little while, but not deep enough. And once it turned bad for the Gamecocks last night, and first game of the series. I was going to say Friday night, a Thursday game here in this situation. You got the SEC tournament looming on a Tuesday as well. You gotta throw some pitchers out there longer than you would want to with the injuries they've dealt with this year, and it can get ugly. Now, not quite as ugly as Mississippi State. You guys see that thing on the video stream? 27-2 last night. So the Gamecocks are in the SEC tournament. They clinched the spot in there yesterday with that Mississippi State loss. The defending national champs, the only SEC school below Carolina from an RPI standpoint, but 27-2. So I understand, and we talked a bunch about it here on the program, and then that's what this show is, right? Coming to the sports conversation through the state of South Carolina lens. And knowing how big a college baseball state South Carolina is, the programs that have had so much success in Carolina and Clemson, and especially the Gamecocks winning the 2 national championships and playing for a 3rd in a row a decade ago. To see Carolina at 12-16 in the SEC, that's not that out of the ordinary. But the overall record at 26-26. Knowing that a 500 season already happened under Mark Kingston in year number 2 at 28-28. Knowing that they did get in the SEC tournament this year, just barely, and seeing the defending national champs in Mississippi State being the one team that Carolina is better than from an RPI standpoint. It shows you that you're just not guaranteed anything in college baseball. Clemson a winner yesterday, 15-1 on the other side of things. Improving their resume. They need as many wins as they can. A sweep this weekend against Boston College would be, I think, comforting, solidify their postseason resume. 33-21 is what they are overall. 11-16 in ACC play. But you improve that thing to 13-16. Then you win a game or 2 in the conference tournament. You're basically a 500 team in an ACC that is, if not equal to the SEC, not far behind at all this year, and was actually ahead of the SEC up until a couple of days ago, I think, from a conference RPI standpoint. So 3:00 game for Clemson and Boston College today in game number 2 of that series in Clemson. The Gamecocks playing in Gainesville, 7:00 tonight for game number 2 in that one. Another score of note there, North Greenville with a big come-from-behind win in the Division II Southeast Regional, beating UNC Pembroke 6-4. So they're playing now a best of 3 series against Lenore Ryan. The winner of that one will move on to the next round. It's basically the super regional round, I think, in the Division II NCAA tournament. Does it a little bit differently, right? I'd like that you get a best of 3 series. That's pretty cool how they do that. But the fact that I guess if North Greenville would have lost that game, it could have been eliminated. It sounds to me like UNC Pembroke got eliminated because of that one loss. I don't have all the details there. We'll definitely get our buddy Trey Dyson in next week to break it all down for us from the North Greenville baseball perspective, where former Gamecock Landon Powell helping them improve to 46-8 overall, I think is the record. Something crazy like that. Heck of a year, no doubt. And again, just kind of bummed having been able to see those tremendous runs for Gamecock baseball and Clemson baseball going deep in the NCAA tournaments and the College World Series and the whole thing. It's a great time of year to latch on to postseason baseball, college baseball, how we're able to watch a lot more of it now, to see it on ESPNs, especially the regional and super regional rounds, the emotion that's involved, man. Absolutely love it. And makes me that much more, I guess, disappointed when it doesn't happen. And I think a lot of Gamecock fans are with me. And now it's a matter of, okay, what about the program? What about the state of the program with Mark Kingston? What happens next? And that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on for sure. But probably not quite as interesting as what we've seen from Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher. Absolutely headline grabbing in so many ways. Because on the field, the fact that Texas A&M backed it up last year and beat Alabama was huge, but then they did that college football thing, right? Where you're better than the number 1 team in the country. This was 2010 Gamecocks, right? You beat Alabama one week, turn around, lose to Kentucky the next. Texas A&M turns around, loses to Mississippi State, LSU last year, lost 4 games total. And it's the brilliance, it's where the utmost respect goes to a guy like Nick Saban. And I can understand how you can make the case that you have to be a guy like Nick Saban to get the results he's got. Because it's so difficult with any team to get the consistency game in and game out, week in and week out in such an emotional, physical game like college football or football in general. But especially college football, when you got 18 to 23-year-olds, and probably these days you probably got some 25-year-olds in there with the COVID year and the graduate transfers and red shirts. So let's be clear about that. Don't buy the Jimbo Fisher line of just 17-year-old kids. But how demanding Nick Saban is, how control hungry he is, micromanaging he is. I mean, we've all seen it play out on game days. We have not been there on a Saturday during May, for instance, when there's a conference call on a Saturday morning for every single assistant coach to check in about recruiting. But Jimbo Fisher's been there. Lane Kiffin was there. And we've seen the way these guys have reacted. It's kind of ironic yesterday that Lane Kiffin seemed to be on Nick Saban's side of this thing, having retweeted someone who was pointing out that Texas A&M hadn't gotten hardly any 5-star recruits in the last several years until name, image, and likeness money hit, where I think the numbers are like 7 5-star recruits in the number 1 recruiting class in the country. So from that standpoint, Nick Saban was speaking truth, I think, to all of us as college football fans. Yep, bought and paid for. Clear. Jimbo Fisher, though, says, hey, wait. We're just playing by the rules, man. Didn't break any rules. Doing it the right way. Doing it and that, to me, is the hilarious part, right? Doing it the way that is allowed within the rules and doing it the right way. Those are 2 different things. But that's the thing about major college sports. He even said it in his press conference at one point, right? In college football at this level. I thought that was interesting. College ball at this level, that we are even having to do this. Despicable comments by Nick Saban. Narcissistic. We build him up as God. I mean, I could not have given you a script that would have been much more over the top, personal, emotional. And then the way that Jimbo is just Jimbo Fisher. Got to experience it firsthand to a very slight degree, that 2010 New Year's Eve bowl game, the Chick-fil-A Bowl where the Gamecocks played against Florida State. And how fast he talks in person and the whole thing. I mean, he is who you see. There is no difference. I didn't see a difference between him on camera and what we saw there. And it just high energy from that standpoint, just like motoring. It's almost like nervous, just boom, boom, boom. The words just keep flowing and the whole thing. And yesterday they were flowing over questions. It was almost like he was having his own press conference, right? He's hearing some words, but it sounded like to me they might have only been want, the Charlie Brown teacher in his head, and he just kept going when he came up with another good jab. Wow. Okay, we'll probably play a little bit more of that for you a little later on because why not? I mean, why? Again, I think the more I watch it, maybe the more amazed I am. But it was pretty jaw-dropping at the time, and going to be fascinating to see where this thing goes with Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M, and Alabama, and the SEC commissioner involved and the whole thing. Oh, wow. Good stuff. At Tim Hill UFA on Twitter, if you guys ever want to hit us up, and you should be able to find us on social media all over the place, or should say Facebook, YouTube, same kind of deal if you search the Tim Hill UFA for unrestricted free agent. Love that you guys are in on a Friday 11 a.m. hour here with the PGA Championship looming, the college baseball season kind of wrapping up, and this college football gem that we were gifted yesterday. Absolute gem with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher. And the fact that, too, that they have been linked. They have had the similar path to some degree, right? Coming from the state of West Virginia and having that mindset of a blue collar, we are looked down upon type of attitude. Again, I think you got to have that to some degree when you're going to be successful in anything, right? You got to have a tremendous work ethic and see yourself as anything but better than whoever you're competing against, whoever you're working against or trying to advance in your career against. And so they ended up coming together, right? I don't think they had any kind of personal relationship until Nick Saban hired Jimbo Fisher at LSU. That's how I understand it. And then, and maybe because of that, right? It wasn't all rosy in their time there. But at the same time, everybody understands that Jimbo Fisher's career probably wouldn't have taken the same career path had he not gone to LSU and worked for Nick Saban, helped him win a national championship there, and elevated, put that notch in his belt, put that on the resume. And we all know, if you follow college football at all, you know if you work for Nick Saban here in the last couple of decades, you separate yourself in that stack of resumes moving forward. It hasn't worked out great for a bunch of them from a head coaching perspective, especially in the SEC. Will Muschamp kind of being at the top of that list. But it has gotten them it's gotten them paid, gotten them a whole lot of money. And I think because of that, because of just the blueprint that Nick Saban pretty much developed, Kirby Smart has followed it, and then some at Georgia, and had a bunch of success and finally broke that streak of Nick Saban assistants not being able to beat the big guy. Maybe that has something to do with Jimbo coming out when he did as well. But we've talked about name, image, and likeness a lot on this program. I know it maybe has been talked about even more than some of you would prefer because it can be a little, I don't know. It's certainly not the best thing about college sports, right? What we love is games, results, great plays, not And I think that too, there is a large portion of college fans out there, college sports fans, that can thump the chest and say, no, this is a pure game. They're playing it for the right reasons, as opposed to pro sports, and they're jumping teams all the time, and it's all about getting paid and contract and holding out, and owners being greedier than players, or players being greedier than owners. And yeah, I don't think any of us love that part of pro sports for sure, and don't want college sports to become that. No doubt. I'm at the top of that list too, man. I don't want college sports to get muddied up by players getting paid, but that concern is way overshadowed by college players, I think, being taken advantage of all these years. And that's why a big proponent of the name, image, and likeness, of the competitive balance. What do they call it back in the day? The pay that got them up to a certain amount, right? Cost of living. That's what it was. The cost of living expense. So always been a big proponent, like Steve Spurrier was, and appreciated Steve Spurrier just coming out and saying it when it wasn't that popular, right? That players should get paid. That he was kind of embarrassed with how much money he made. And I think that's the main problem I have with the Nick Saban perspective, that college sports has always been about being equal. Come on, man. Football players have it a little bit different at Alabama than the tennis team. And there's been nothing equal. I mean, if you're all about being equal, then you wouldn't complain a bit about other schools being able to now offer name, image, and likeness money. You wouldn't be concerned about it a bit, because everybody can do the same thing. I think where he's mainly concerned is Alabama's booster base is not going to have the inherent advantages that the University of Alabama athletic department has had, where, again, that number, if you guys are just joining us, The Athletic has a great article about it. Andy Staples digging into some of the numbers and all the comments that Nick Saban said the other night, the Wednesday night event, I believe it was, with he and Nate Oates talking to Alabama fans. But talking about, he went through basically the transcript of it and reacted to certain parts that were true, certain parts that just were flat out false. And he mentioned the transfer portal explanation from Saban was way off, I think, in this thing. I think Nick Saban was saying that the NCAA was that schools were getting sued, or the NCAA was getting sued by athletes pursuing transfers. And that's why they had to give the transfer portal up. That's why they had to make the transfer portal, was basically because players were suing teams or the NCAA. And he was like, nope, that's not it at all. Wasn't it? It's an antitrust thing at a different kind of legislative level. But then also the fact that he was saying, nope, it's supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be equal across the board. And Alabama's athletic department investing $58.5 million a couple of years ago is the number that Staples dug up, compared to Mississippi State at $30 million, 30.5, and Kent State, Nick Saban's alma mater, still technically an FBS school, right? $7 million. So to me, that's where this is coming out of, right? Used to have a major recruiting advantage, a major just competitive advantage. And how Staples mentions in this article too, how Alabama expanded their staff kind of exponentially, famous for hiring former NFL head coaches, making them analysts, right? We saw that kind of effect at South Carolina here in the last few days, with Shane Beamer hiring Freddie Kitchens as an analyst on your staff in the SEC. Former NFL head coach, now an analyst. And that's happened so many times. So many different names have done it at Alabama, and then parlayed that into, whatever. See Bill O'Brien right now. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, go down the list. So it's never been equal, but it's always been in Nick Saban's favor. And that's where you get, when he doesn't get his way from Jimbo Fisher, the narcissist in him just can't stand it. Basically what he said yesterday. Oh, wow. October 8th. Again, Alabama, Texas A&M. Going to be fascinating. And then in the meantime, too. All right, so I feel like this thing might have put it on the fast track as well. And I think this is the last thing Jimbo Fisher wants. When I say put it on the fast track, I mean this name, image, and likeness conversation that has been happening in around college football programs for a while now. Maybe not as prevalent nationally or important nationally. That cranked it up yesterday real quick. I mean, everybody's talking about, I mean, even this time yesterday, right after the Jimbo Fisher press conference, everybody was talking about that. And I don't think it just goes away. Maybe that's where we are with the NCAA, right? They just don't have such little power that they're just they can't do anything about it moving forward. I don't know. But what happens from here, from the broader perspective and the name, image, and likeness stuff, other than what they've done here in the last days and weeks, coming out and say, nope, just want to reiterate, this is the rule. There will be punishments and the whole thing. And no one, not a single school, has turned in any kind of violation, has raised their hand and said, you know what, I think we might have messed this up. We might have broken a rule. I mean, you got the inmates are running the asylum. Why would they? Doesn't make any sense at all. It's why this NCAA model as we have it right now is pretty ridiculous and broken. And I think Nick Saban was trying to call that out. And that's where the truth is on his side to a certain degree. But then trying to do it and say that you want everybody to be equal in the whole thing, well, that's never how it's been. That's where Jimbo Fisher's saying, yeah, you won with all the resources, with where it's already been done before. And that's where that expanded staff, the $58+ million per year into the football program, compared to half at some other SEC schools. And what is that? I can't do that math. 7 into 58. It's a little bit more than 10%, right? It's probably 12%, 15%-ish is what Kent State spent of that for their football program a couple of years ago. Just not an equal deal. And that's what college football has been forever. And that's where I think most of us, the regular fan, absolutely has these conversations, right? Hey, Deion's going to pay $1 million. Yeah, Texas A&M, see what they're doing? Completely buying their class. But Nick Saban can't do that without other people standing up. And I wonder what Deion's going to do. Deion went relatively quiet yesterday and just said that he will have a response. You know, with the Aflac relationship, I'm guessing they'll have something to say about it. And he might be getting some guidance from them. But I don't see Deion as a guy who's going to censor himself, especially after what Jimbo Fisher came out and did yesterday. And he's going to stand up for his program and try to capitalize on exactly his position. So, man, just fascinated. Troy says, just a thought. If NIL was around years ago, Pete Bell might still be coaching Western. Well done with the Blue Chips reference. Good call, Troy. Hey, and I'm not that old, Double R. Didn't I do a show with Matt Berry in the 90s? Whoa. I was firmly in the mid-2000s. I think it was 06 and 07, something like that. The old Matt and Tim show. Still some around that remember that thing, and absolute blast to do every day. Nuts. Matt's a great guy to work with. Still in contact with him. Still one of my best buddies out there at the PGA Championship. At least was the last few days out in Tulsa. His old stomping grounds near where he got one of his first TV jobs in Oklahoma. And the College Football Live on Saturday night. Just kind of running college football, helping ESPN run college football. I love it for him. And loving talking to you guys about this specifically with Jimbo and Nick Saban, but this in general as well, as we're nearing a 3-week point here on the show. And again, not quite sure how it's going to continue to evolve. was pretty pumped. They could play some video clips today. Love the back and forth with you guys live from the 10 a.m. to noon spot. Love that you guys can catch it later on at any point, whether you want to watch it on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, or listen to it on any kind of platform, podcast platform. Podbean does this thing live for me every day on audio. So if that's how you would like to consume it as well, podbean.com is the place to go. And I think you do a quick search for the Tim Hill UFA, and you can find that as well. And please encourage all of you to subscribe to the YouTube page or a podcast platform, or both, if that's how you consume your stuff. But I've been able to talk to a lot of people here in the last few weeks that have supported the show and had a lot of great perspectives, and we'll continue to do that over the next several weeks, months, years moving forward as well, and doing it. The goal is to do it a little differently than anything else, because we just have that freedom here, and that's what I'm looking forward to and appreciate having done. Looking forward to even more exploring exactly where we can take this thing and how we can do it in the best way possible for you each and every day. But to have what we've got going on with Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher, an especially entertaining topic, I think, for most of us, all of us who love college football, because this wouldn't be the same. I think it would be really easy for us to just dismiss this as millionaire coaches just going back and forth if this was a lower level of coach, of pedigree guy, right? Even if it was just Deion Sanders and someone else, and then the group of five, Gus Malzahn going back and forth. And if Malzahn was close to getting a guy, and then all of a sudden he ends up going to Jackson State, this wouldn't be what we got. This is two big boys, the big boy in college sport, in all of college sports, right? I guess now that Coach K's gone, especially now that he's retired. But from the college football standpoint, college football is king. Nick Saban's been the guy. The track record doesn't lie, man. And maybe some of this too is for those of us who have worked for bosses that we have not appreciated their style. Because you guys got that yesterday, right? From Jimbo Fisher. I definitely got that vibe. Especially with the shot. I worked for a guy like Bobby Bowden and learned what to do. And I worked for other guys and learned how not to do it. That shot. One of the many, but also at the same time kind of endearing himself to the former Florida State fans who, and that's the thing about Jimbo Fisher, right? You see all the success, the national championship at Florida State, and you saw how messy it was at the end. You saw success last year. Texas A&M knocked off number 1 Alabama, and then you saw them lose 4 more games. So that's why polarizing, I think, is a really good way to put him. And what I was reading this morning was talking about how, some guys say highest character guy out there. Other guys say phony when they're talking about Jimbo Fisher. And I guess that's the other thing that you don't hear about the Nick Saban. Guys kind of revere him, former coaches who've coached for him, the Will Muschamps, the Kirby Smarts, I put in that camp. And revere might be too strong of a word, especially when they were competing against him in the whole thing. But would never have I don't know what, the guts, let's say. You can go farther than that, right? And Jimbo wasn't just gutsy yesterday. He was he crossed the line several times, getting personal, and despicable was one of the first words he used. When despicable comes out in a press conference early on from a coach, especially, that's going to be a good one. I don't know if I've ever heard it sitting in a lot of press conferences over the years, but when despicable popped out early on, I was like, whoa, you got to sit up real quick. I would have loved to have seen a camera on the room too, like from Jimbo's perspective of the Texas A&M media contingent, which I couldn't imagine have been too large yesterday. I'd say maybe a dozen people, right? This is a kind of an emergency impromptu press conference, maybe 24. I got a buddy who covers Texas A&M out in Texas, and I'll get more of the details for you on that one, and we'll have him on next week too. My buddy John Wilson, who works out for a TV station out there, to get more perspective, because I think they're going to be, yes, all in. What was Nick Saban doing? How dare he? These are people. You see them come in, you get to know their personalities as players, right? No way they did anything wrong, but from the outside looking in, you kidding me? Of course there was money involved here. How could there not be? How does Texas A&M pull that off otherwise? And knowing how relatively easy it is to pull that off, knowing, and this is not just complete fan conjecture, right? This was talking to people involved in football that we've had on this show, right? Former Steve Spurrier assistant G.A. Mangus telling us, yeah, it's always been like this. There's always been some shadiness changing hands in major college football recruiting. And he's not saying anything that we don't know, that hasn't been out there, but him having been in it, saying it, then that's a little different. And Eric Kimry talking about how it is now the first thing that is talked about in the recruiting process. And he said he doesn't blame families, right? You got to find the best situation. I mean, we all know the Will Wade strong offers caught on tape, and then text messages, finally his undoing there. We all knew that was happening. It was impossible not to. I think we would all be shocked if it ends up coming out that Bill Self was wrongly accused across the board at Kansas, and completely nothing wrong there. I mean, just won the national championship. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we live in the real world, but it is about, all right, what can you prove? And the way that the NCAA is set up now is ridiculous. There's no one out there dumb enough to write up an agreement by the letter of the law that would be against the rules. There's no one. It doesn't make any sense. But you all know it is the, hey, here's what we can do for you. Keep it under your hat. But that's the first thing that recruits and their families want to know. And it should be. And it would make zero sense if they weren't looking at it like that. Brian wants to know thoughts on the NBA playoffs. Haven't busted those out yet because I turned it on last night, Brian, and was really disappointed. It was another one of those games, right? It was the reverse of what happened the first time with Boston and Miami, where Miami just completely dominated in the third quarter. This time, the Celtics go small with Grant Williams, and they stick it to the Heat. And went up 25 at half, I think. Largest lead I think the Celtics had ever had in a playoff game at halftime, which is incredible. Really love that Celtics and Bucks series that I mentioned. Just the intensity cranked up to another level. Really bummed that the Warriors-Mavericks first game was as uncompetitive as it was. Get game 2 tonight at 9 o'clock on TNT. I'm hoping that series will tighten up and we can see the best of Luka Doncic, then the best of the ridiculously talented Warriors too, and actually get some good games. So that's where I'm at with the NBA playoffs. I'm definitely interested now that we're in the conference finals and we got some good storylines to latch on to. You got the new kid on the block, and Luka Doncic, relatively new, right? I get it. He's been around, but he hasn't been to this level yet. And he certainly had not done what he did against the Suns until a week or so ago, which I think took him to the next level of superstardom. Maybe uber superstardom, maybe. And then you got Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green already at that level, already done everything they've done, and now trying to get it back. So that's fantastic over in the West. And then in the East, and that is, talk about the West Virginia blue-collar mentality. That's how I think, with Saban and Fisher, that's how I think of both of these teams in the East, especially Miami and Jimmy Butler and everything he's done. And, man, more respect to him for doing it yet again. But Boston figured it out last night. now what kind of adjustment, what kind of chess move will Miami make moving forward? So at least we have 1-1 in that series, even though it's two kind of clinkers of a game. I would be really surprised if Dallas ends up tying it up at 1-1. I'm thinking they're going to win game 3 to make it 2-1 in that series and try to get back in it. But I think the Warriors are just ultimately too talented across the board. Been there, done that. And Luka's great, but I don't think he's got that level of greatness in him just yet anyway. But I hope so. We'll see. So that's the big NBA take there. The PGA take, I think that's where most of my attention will be this weekend. And I'll be shocked if Rory can go wire to wire for us. Thrilled that he's on top of the leaderboard to start. Pretty surprised that Jordan Spieth didn't play better than he played in round number 1. But again, he's so up and down, hot and cold. And I know he'd been playing well as of late and got a chance for the career Grand Slam here, never having won the PGA, but won the other 3. From Texas, the rolling hills in Tulsa should have a bit of an inherent kind of regional advantage. Wind ain't going to bother him, the whole thing, but it didn't happen yesterday. And then to see Tiger jump out to a good start, man, I was excited. On the show, you probably hear it in my voice yesterday. Saw him 2 under, I think, through the first few holes. And then on hole number 9, didn't go well. Tweaked something. His hole number 9, hole number 18 on the course, and then just struggled from there. And makes me think at 4 over through round number 1, really unlikely that he's going to make the cut today. But I'm definitely going to check it out. I just hope I don't have to kind of pity watch him hobble how he ended up at the Masters, even though he made the cut there. The John Daly story, I think, is fantastic at the PGA. I really hope he can continue being relevant. And from the local standpoint, we'll be keeping an eye on Dustin Johnson for sure. 2:36 today is the tee-off time for Rory and Tiger and Jordan Spieth. Justin Thomas is up to tied for second right now. He's 1 under through 10 today, 4 under for the tournament, 1 back of Rory McIlroy. Joaquin Niemann, Will Zalatoris, and Tom Hoagie also just a shot back at latest check there on the PGA Championship. So love that the PGA Championship is relevant. Great time of year to have it. Not pushed back way too much, I think. And then what we got going with the boys in the SEC. I think it's worth playing more Jimbo Fisher. What do you guys think? You guys in here? I'm going to play a little bit more of Jimbo Fisher's press conference yesterday because it was so unlike anything we've ever seen. So let me share that screen for you. Let's click it back to the beginning here. See if we can get more Jimbo.
Some comments made last night in Alabama.
Turn them up, sorry.
First of all, I'll say it's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody and an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids. You're taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their families. And they broke state laws. They're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen, and it's ridiculous. But when he's not on top, and the parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit here and defend 17-year-old kids and families and Texas A&M because we do things right. We're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here. We're doing a heck of a job. These coaches have done a great job. Our players have done a great job. The whole organization of recruiting people. It's despicable that we got to sit there at this level of ball and say these things to defend the people of this organization, the kids, 17-year-old kids and their families. It's amazing. Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past or anybody that's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. And it's despicable. It really is. And it's a shame we have to sit up here and have this conversation about things we do. And it's personal to us. Yes, it is. It's personal to A&M. It's personal to our players. It's personal to our coaches and everybody involved. And I know the guy, know him really well. It's amazing that we're allowed to do those things. It's really despicable. And I hate it for our players who are coming here, who did things the right way, have done things the right way, and will continue to do things the right way. I apologize to you that people insult you publicly the way they're doing it. And our fans, I apologize to you guys for people saying those things about Texas A&M. I promise you this, there are no violations. There are nothing wrong. It's the second time we've had to do this with grown men who don't get their way and want to pout, throw a fit, and act up. Just go ask all the people who work for him. You'll know exactly what he's about. I always said this. My dad always told me this. When people show you who they are, believe them. He's showing you who he is.
Questions? To the left, Olin.
A couple of things, Jimbo. First of all, have you had any contact with Nick since
No. Oh, he's called.
you just didn't take the call?
Not going to. We're done.
And
He shows you who he is.
and then I just wanted
He's
to,
the greatest ever, huh?
and then I just wanted
When
to
you got all the advantages, it's easy.
and I just wanted to just put it point blank. So no players in you're saying that no players in
There's
this
no
22
bylaws of
received any
anything we
money
ever
or-
promised, done, anything that goes against the laws of the state of Texas. And it's insulting to say a 17-year-old and his family broke laws. No.
Down front, Brent.
You know, y'all have both spoken so highly of each other in the past in terms of what y'all have done in your previous relationship. So how disappointing was it to hear that from him, in terms of, a mentor type to you?
It's
as well?
disappointing. No, it wasn't. No, listen, you coach with people like Bobby Bowden and learn how to do things. You coach with other people and learn how not to do things. There's a reason people don't go, I ain't went back and worked for him with opportunities.
Wow. Again, the first 4 minutes or so of that thing. Unreal. Unreal what we just heard from Jimbo Fisher. And again, if you've already heard it, you've already seen it. I get it. I can't tell you how many times I've watched it now. Troy says, I'm not sure that Bowden did do it right. Free Shoes University. They did get busted for that. But I think Jimbo probably referring more to how he and the Bowdens, I think he coached for Terry as well and played for maybe at Samford, but how they treated their assistant coaches, how they treated their staff, how they just treated people. That's what I was always impressed with about the Bowdens. I put Terry Bowden in there. He's the one I had the most interaction with when he was at Clemson, would go to their weekly press conferences, working for the TV station there in Columbia. Did that for several years. They set it up really well for us media nerds back then, with Lou Holtz doing it on Monday and Tommy Bowden doing it on a Tuesday. So I was able to go to both of those. And I'd never forget just getting in my car, leaving one day, and Tommy had popped out and was getting ready to go on a jog. Just treated me like a normal person. Like, all right, have a good day, man. Be safe. Those type of things just don't happen with major college football coaches. I mean, it certainly didn't happen with Lou Holtz and his golf cart, and feel like he was always kind of in a different realm, living in a different world. Steve Spurrier, I guess that happened to some degree, a lot more with Spurrier since he was around his players more on the ground kind of guy. Never forget when he was having his very first press conference, not the introductory one, but the very first press gathering, I guess, after that we were supposed to meet at the football building. And there were several of us out there before the building was unlocked, and it was Spurrier's job. I guess he had the key. They didn't even have anybody else to open it for him. He came in and jiggling the handle. I was like, I think you got to push the button, man, to get in there. You got to push it. It's like, oh, okay, there we go. And we went up to their little office up there that they were letting a few of us in there, a few TV nerds. And there was one like whiteboard up there with recruiting strategies. And I wasn't going to say anything. I was reading it, talking about like selling the head coach and a couple of other different things on there that it wasn't like state secrets or anything, but it was clearly what they had been talking about. And I don't think it was meant for the public eye, but so I digress there just with how coaches get known in the business, I think, in the football business for the environments they create, right? The culture. We talk about culture all the time. And let's be very clear. In major college football, there is no country club atmosphere. I've heard that being thrown out to describe the Steve Spurrier type approach, right? Where assistant coaches would come in and they'd be taken aback how the organization was run, how the football program was run, a little bit more laid back than others. But man, come on the field, there were plenty enough personalities out there. The strength coaches back in the day, that they were making sure tons of work got done. It was major college football, and either you perform, you do what you're told to do, you show up when you're told to show up, if not earlier. There are tons of expectations on these players, and you got to perform at a high level. And it is not for the faint of heart. You're going to have plenty of frank conversations with multiple coaches, staff members, whatever. They will be in your face. It will be intense. That is major college football, major college sports. So I think the degree to which end of the spectrum your culture is on in college football, it's pretty tiny variance when you're, as opposed to, coming at something completely from a laid back style, completely intense style. So I think those things can be overstated, but probably what isn't overstated is the demands a head coach puts on their staff, or even a coordinator puts on its staff, and then how they treat others as human beings, right? Because you have the employee-employer relationship. Shane Beamer's in charge of Gamecock football, but his style as the CEO is to be, for lack of a better term, a nice guy, right? That's who he is. Now, we can overstate that and say, oh, so nice and personable and the whole thing, and let's not be tricked, or let's not be naive to the fact that no, there is the very demanding part of that job that he also understands and executes. I'm sure we just don't see it publicly very much, but we certainly see him upset on the sidelines every now and again. We saw the reaction after the Georgia game in year number 1 when asked why the offense didn't do better, and he's just exasperated, like, hey man, and Georgia's got 5 stars all over the place. They're really dang good. There wasn't much we could do, kind of thing. So some of these videos that you see released by the social media team around Gamecock football, you can see him in the drills and the intensity and running up and down and the whole thing. Now he's got some cheerleader type energy into that as well, but don't get fooled into thinking that's all it is, right? The Dabo Swinney cheerleader type reputation. I mean, I think we've seen enough examples. The classic one in the ACC championship game several years ago, where the punter pulls one down and decides that he can't get a punt off, and man, just lived to rue the day that happened. He just kept going after him on the sidelines. Like, that stuff has to happen when you're a major college football coach to a certain degree, right? But what doesn't have to happen is demanding nearly all of your assistant coach's time, as opposed to, and Bruce Arians just popped in my head, what he had in Tampa Bay, where he would only get mad at his coaches, at least this was the public line, right, if they didn't attend certain things with their families. He made sure that was the environment, the culture that he cultivated. Well, there are a bunch of coaches out there that say, no, you got to sacrifice, and your dedication is here, and you are required to do this no matter what, right? No exceptions made. If I make an exception for you, then I got to make an exception for another guy, and it just doesn't work that way. And Nick Saban's that guy, famously. And this article I was reading with The Athletic today about the behind the scenes kind of tension that was no love lost in the relationship between Jimbo and Saban. And we're just now realizing it. It's just now going public, is that the public perception out there that Nick Saban kind of only requires guys to come in for 2 years and then sends them off on their way in a better job. But the anonymous coach that commented on this said, no, that's all people can handle. And that seemed very apparent with Lane Kiffin. I mean, whose father, Monty Kiffin, was kind of notoriously a football junkie and all about football. And Lane grew up in that environment and accelerated his football knowledge, got him that Raiders job at such a young age, and unfortunately didn't give him the tools he needed to handle the other parts of being a head coach. So that's kind of the culture around the Nick Saban model, even too, that, you know, his assistant coaches would take from him. And that was certainly the feel that I had covering the Will Muschamp era at South Carolina football. That even though Will Muschamp would be much, I don't know, because I haven't been around the Nick Saban covering that program from a day in, day out basis. But Muschamp was a guy that I described it this way. When you see things on TV, like I mentioned, Jimbo Fisher, same guy on the camera as he is off the camera, just going to talk fast and be kind of odd. And you saw a little bit in the press conference, right? He'll just talk right over a question. And if he's got something emotional he wants to get out, he's going to get it out. And you got to wait your turn. Steve Spurrier was a guy that I think was really, really funny in the room and could kind of connect in a room to a certain degree. But it wouldn't necessarily, it would come off as much more maybe harsh or polarizing if you watched it on TV. Because maybe you felt like you weren't kind of in on the joke, or you couldn't see that he's kind of, you know, relaxing his body when he said it and changed something. I don't know what it was exactly. And Lou Holtz was kind of famous for being one guy on TV, one guy when a camera was on, and another guy when the cameras were off. And not necessarily someone that you could trust then. And just the environment they created, I think Steve Spurrier deserves a lot of credit for always giving some latitude to his assistant coaches and their family lives, and more so than nearly any other major college head coach. And Nick Saban would be the example that you give on the other end, right? The demanding boss. Do it, or you're not going to have a job, right? This is what is required. And then I think expanding that coaching staff is a good example of that, right? And Spurrier always kind of made fun of it to a certain degree, right? You don't need that many coaches. Being a head coach isn't that hard of a job, he would say. And I think to a lot of people, it came off as arrogant or obnoxious or whatever, overly confident. But he's just kind of a matter-of-fact guy. And I think he had the problem with making things seem harder than they actually were. And especially the way that he could simplify things and be the offensive genius. I get that. And Saban's been the other guy. Like Steve Spurrier won a Heisman Trophy. So you got to understand his approach, his perspective on things. He's the rare, extremely gifted athlete who was also an extremely gifted head coach, who was able to somehow take all that information and that ability and then translate it and communicate it to a staff, a team, players, get them to play for him, the whole thing. That doesn't happen very often. I'm trying to think in football, especially, how many examples there are of those. Mike Ditka was a good player in the NFL. I feel like it's more like Sean McVay, right? That's more the traditional model of a head coach, a guy who maybe fought and scrapped his way into a practice squad role for a little bit, and then clearly was not going to be cut out for any kind of football stardom, but had the background. Nick Saban was kind of that guy too, as a player. And I think those are the guys, Will Muschamp put him in that category, that demand so much, and they do it because that's the only way they know how to do it. And maybe a little bit out of insecurity too, knowing how uber competitive it is. Troy says Steve Spurrier was brutally honest and it hurt towards the end when he made the comment that he was probably going to coach 2 or 3 more years. No, absolutely. No doubt about it. I think it hurt his image outside of his own fan base a lot of times. Now, it was helpful when you're going back and forth with Dabo Swinney back in the day, right? Throwing some jabs out there. And I think people could identify with him as the South Carolina coach in that back and forth a lot more than they could identify with him as the Florida coach when he was winning a bunch of SEC championships. But I say all that to say, man, that is what makes this even more fascinating, because so the human side of me is on Jimbo's side, right? You should be a good boss. You should be a good person. You should understand there is more to life than your job. Nick Saban is not that guy. Or if he is not that guy very often, or whatever it is. He doesn't have that reputation at all. And I can't say for sure that Jimbo Fisher has that reputation of knowing how to treat his assistants well and the whole thing. That was not mentioned in this article of the behind the scenes in the relationship with Jimbo and Nick Saban that I read on The Athletic, and will be interesting to see what continues to come out, right? Because like Jimbo said, you want to dig things up, go dig them up. You can find them. You can talk to people. He says he's got nothing to hide. I would assume that means that by and large, he's treated people well, but things got ugly for him personally at Florida State for sure. But where it goes from here, because I get it that Texas A&M fans probably latched onto this and love Jimbo Fisher for what he did yesterday. But I think you can't do that in college football. You can't become more endearing to your fan base without inching up that expectation level a little bit. I mean, especially if you're going to call out the most successful coach in college football history. And so now, let's add the recruiting expectations in there as well. Number 1 recruiting class in the country. Beat Alabama last year. Come out, call Alabama out, or at least certainly call Nick Saban out personally. Stand up for your program. Respond in a just flame-throwing, over-the-top kind of way that Jimbo Fisher came out with yesterday. Wow. Now what's the expectation for Aggies fans? I'm sure a bunch of them heard that yesterday and like, oh, yeah, we're not losing anymore. And maybe they're right to think that. But that has been one of the main issues with the Texas A&M football program, I think, for decades and decades. It's kind of the South Carolina fan base on steroids in a lot of ways. Extremely loyal, great home field advantage. Football is important. You want to go to a game there. You can have a great visitor experience there. But it's not easy to win championships there. There is no championship pedigree there. I feel like in all those ways, Texas A&M and South Carolina very similar. And then you had the Eric Hyman connection several years ago, moving from South Carolina's AD to the Texas A&M AD job. And he helped raise a bunch of that money to improve the facilities. And now you can use that money from a name, image, and likeness standpoint, and clearly the collective around Texas A&M probably doing it the best. I even struggle to put it that way because I don't know if the best is the right way to put it, but that's where we are right now. And then Jimbo going all personal on us yesterday to the czar of college football. Raised him up to be a god. Whew. Wow. Again, you don't get that. I mean, maybe we see that. We've seen stuff on the field, right? That Jim Schwartz and Jim Harbaugh back in the day with the kind of the back slap and the handshake, and that was an awkward thing. You've seen all kind of icy post-game interactions or pre-game deals. The Spurrier Dabo Swinney dynamic was fascinating, especially during that 5-year run. And as Clemson was getting it going and the whole thing, fascinating. Fantastic, I think, for just the state of South Carolina, college football in general. I mean, after all, it is a game we're talking about here. But these guys took it to the next level, and this name, image, and likeness with all the money exchanging hands, I guess that's where it's different. And to me, that's where it's massively hypocritical for a guy who's making $9.5 million in Nick Saban to come off and tell people either how they should spend their money, kind of how he was telling the boosters, or to be critical of other schools for how they've moved forward, maybe against the spirit of the law, but something that is not against the letter of the law when it comes to the NCAA rules about the pay for play thing. And how, if they can ever, so I would respect Nick Saban a lot more had he done this publicly 2 years ago, a year ago, even at this time, come out and done it without the sour grapes feel that it came off of Wednesday night about, oh, well, Texas A&M's number one and even Jackson State. I mean, to mention that is just extremely ridiculous to me. It only shows that he is that much more concerned about what was once his recruiting advantage no longer existing. And so acknowledge that and don't try to sell it to me as what's good or bad for the state of the sport or the state of college sports. Because those athletes getting money is a good thing for college athletes. How something can be good for college athletes and not good for college sports, I think, is kind of the ultimate scam that some of these coaches are trying to sell us out there. That, sure, there are going to be issues. And there will be maybe a different relationship between fans and players, players and players, players and coaches. It's got to evolve. But there's no way that a coach making $9.5 million and a player making $0 is anywhere close to a good thing if we're just going on a morality scale or an ethics scale or whatever. So you can't be that guy and then start lecturing us what's good for the sport, what's good for college football. I mean, you can. He did. He is that guy. He's going to continue to do it. But you should have been that guy before it became an issue. If you're really worried about the sanctity of the sport, he could have called a press conference every day and said, here's what needs to happen for the good of college athletics. He should have started with coaches' salaries need to go way down. We need to get this money to the people who are actually on the field producing. If you're talking about things being fair. But that's not what it is. That's not who Nick Saban is either. That's not who I am. I'm not for restricting anyone's salary. Unrestricted free agent here. Good for the coaches. They made that much money. I think you can make the argument. It's pretty prevalent out there that Nick Saban is actually worth more than $9.5 million to the University of Alabama every single year. Good. Go make your money. But you telling me all those players that you've had through the years weren't worth a significant amount of money too? That's where I got a problem with it the most. But I'm glad today I hope it didn't come off of, I hope it did, the show didn't come off as me just having a problem with both Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban or one or the other or the whole thing. Again, great for college football. It was kind of ridiculous too in a 12-year-old, I'm going to take my ball and go home kind of role or way. But it was college football at its finest in May. Jan says, good show, Tim. Hope you and the UFAs have a great weekend. Stay cool. Same with you, man. Getting into an all-star situation with my 7-year-old in coach pitch baseball. We got the first practice tonight, so that's going to be a fun little ride, I think, from a father/volunteer coach standpoint. And being around the game of baseball the next several weeks will be something I'm looking forward to for sure. Maybe I can give you some stories from that, guys. And really appreciate you guys hopping on with me, especially if you've been on since the beginning now, 3 weeks in, or if you popped on, you just found out about it yesterday. However, you have come to this show, know that it is greatly appreciated. Please help me spread the word if you can. I'm going to start cranking up some sponsors, I believe, next week, and really continue to get this show building. And the more that you can be a part of it, the more fun it's going to be for all of us. Meredith Taylor also weighing in. Enjoy the PGA this weekend, everyone. And maybe we can get Meredith back with her expert take on what we see in the second major of the year on Monday. Yeah, going to be a great tournament for sure. Let's see if we can. We're going to try to double down on the technology here and see if we can get a little play-out music here going. Nope, doesn't look like that's going to happen. That's been pretty consistent. I think I got to just give up that dream on the show. I'm not going to hum a song for you, but I will tell you to have a great weekend. And again, thank you for checking out Tim Hill Unrestricted Free Agent. Please go subscribe to the YouTube page and click the like and the comments and all that stuff too, if you can do that. And we'll see you on Monday. Going to do it a little earlier on Monday as well. I'll put that out on social media, but I'm thinking 8 a.m. to maybe 10 or 9:30 or something like that. It's part of the whole freedom that is this unrestricted free agent thing on the internet. Thanks for listening.